Hello, Guerilla. This is episode 3, season 4 of Guerilla Opera Podcast. My name is Tae Kim, Ensemble pianist, and I'll be your host for this episode. On October 30th, Guerilla Opera joins the opening weekend of the Boston New Music Festival with a live studio performance of Dreamwalker, a world premiere exhibition of works by composer Kaya Sariaho and Caroline Louise Miller. Today, we're with Caroline, whose work Ophelia's Life Dream details the thoughts of a dreaming woman who supposes she is drowning amidst the bizarre worlds of mysterious bioluminescent fungi, moths that drink tears of sleeping birds, and a giant self-destructing palm trees. Thank you for joining us today. So, looking at the score, how would you categorize Ophelia's Life Dream? It reads like a soliloquy and acts like Pierre Lunaire with electronics.
Well, I think I would say it's an experimental piece of theater with sound design. Yeah, I think that's what I would call it.
What was the inspiration behind that work?
I wrote it in 2009 and I revised it in 2014, but at the time I started creating it, I was going through a time where I was really obsessed with zoology and with Darwin's theory of evolution. And I would just walk around and I would look at plants and animals and different creatures and try to imagine the different forces that had shaped their forms over time, over eons and eras and billions of years. And I also kind of started to get frustrated that I couldn't experience life as anything other than a human. And I wanted pretty desperately to try to transmute into another life form for a day, just to see what it's like to experience life as a plant or as a mushroom or an insect or something. So in part, the Ophelia's Life Dream was inspired by that, where the main character, she kind of has a dream within a dream within a dream, where she kind of transforms into different life forms and gets to experience the world in different ways. Yeah, I was also thinking a lot about just death and meaning, and about finding meaning within the world as it is instead of looking for something outside, because there's so much that's fascinating and beautiful in the world. And I felt that when I was walking around looking at plants and thinking about evolutionary biology.
I remember reading the description for the Ophelia's Life Dream, and it says, what was it? The mysterious bioluminescent fungi, moths that drink tears of sleeping birds, and the giant self-destructing palm trees. And you're thinking this is coming out of I don't know, like a fantasy movie or something. But in a quick Google search, and literally they're just real things from Madagascar, which is amazing. And you're absolutely right. There's so many fantastical creatures in the earth to begin with. And that's fascinating how in order to experience that, you actually wrote something to experience it. That's even, oh man, that's so cool. So could you tell me about your libretto experience?
Yeah, so I wrote the libretto myself, and I've been really interested in writing for a long time, and it's always something that, never something I like. I wouldn't say that I'm a professional writer or anything like that, but I would journal a lot and write stories and poems and things like that. So the libretto is pretty stream of consciousness. I just kind of tried to imagine what it would be like to be each of these creatures, and try to sort of write down sensations that came to mind. So that's mostly how I developed the libretto.
Any motto? Or was it just out of your sheer desire to be part of, I don't know, either a fungi or the moths or this palm tree?
I don't know. I mean, it was a long time ago that I wrote it. I think there was a poem that kind of inspired me. I forget who the poet was, though, but in the poet, I think he talked about lying at the bottom of a lake and seeing fish swimming above. And I I liked that imagery. So, yeah.
That is so cool. So did you take any kind of classes beforehand with libretto, or it was just basically, I want to write, and I'm going to put music behind it? And was that the idea?
Yeah, that was just the idea.
So
I just wrote it.
Yeah. In some ways, it just works so well. I thought it's all the electronics and, of course, the actor or singer, I guess. But having that kind of quote-unquote instrumentation actually does work really well, because I think the whole electronics does somehow it actually creates such a fantasy sound world that necessarily can't be produced. Well, I don't know. Anyway, so what was the idea behind the instrumentation?
Well, yeah, I mean, kind of what you're saying, like the solo vocalist with electronics, I think is a good instrumentation for this kind of really introspective piece. That's a really internal journey, but also very dreamy, where, yeah, you can have the vocalist, going through their monologue and their soliloquy, and the electronics casting this really intense, different atmosphere. And yeah, the electronics can also kind of move us through different sound worlds that suggest certain things happening within a dream. So, and yeah, and unlike traditional instruments too, maybe you can draw any sound you want, like the sound of insects or like flies going past a mic, things like that. So, yeah, it's made sense to me.
How'd you get into electronics?
I got into electronics in my undergraduate degree. My third year of that. So I always leaned towards wanting to write for huge instrumentations, because I like having a lot of different possibilities at my fingertips. And I just get excited when there's lots of different things going on. So I wanted to write for orchestra. But when I discovered electronics, I was like, whoa, it's like an orchestra, but now I can use any sound in the universe. So from then on out, at least half of my pieces have involved electronics, because I like the different options.
That's so cool. How would one prepare electronics for something like Ophelia's Life Dream?
That's a good question. I mean, the electronics have kind of shifted form a few times, just because different people who are performing Ofelia, they want different kinds of timing. So that's actually something that I'm working on with Aliana.
Okay.
Is, working with her sense of timing and sort of adjusting the timing of the electronics, maybe stretching some things, shrinking some sections to accommodate how she wants to perform the piece. But I think that when I first prepared them, you use a digital audio workstation and you find sounds you want, kind of layer them and sculpt them to make a certain kind of interplay of sounds and move through different atmospheres. And I just tested it out myself by taking the libretto and speaking it the way that I would act it out to test the timing of the electronics. And but it's kind of a work in progress, actually. It's adjusted each time it's performed.
I have so many questions. So basically, it's not like the back in the days, string quartet with the tape. Where the tape is completely set, and essentially the string quartet has to be with the tape, or else. So I guess so. There's much more flexibility with the electronics. And another question is, I don't know why I had this image. I have the image of you with the microphone just going around in the world and just kind of recording all the sounds. How do you get all these sounds? Do you download it from a website, or do you just go out in the world and record them, or?
Both. Crowdsourcing.
Okay.
I just find sounds where, like, if I need a particular sound, I ask myself, like, can I make this sound myself? And sometimes the answer is yes, so I'll go record it. But sometimes the answer is no, I don't have access to like rain dripping inside a cave. But someone out there has recorded that, and so I use the archive freesound.org a lot.
Okay.
You can find recordings all over the world. They're of mixed quality. Some people know how to record and some people don't. And they have, mixed sample rates and gear and things like that. But there are some really beautiful recordings on there, and anybody can download them and use them.
Really?
And I contribute to it too. So I post sounds there that I recorded.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
So have you performed the piece by yourself?
No, I've never performed it. I'm not much of a performer. I perform electronics, but I don't do
Okay. Oh, you don't do that. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So whenever I see an electronic work with a live ensemble, I always ask, why not have everything be electronic?
Because you mean like have the voice too,
yeah.
as electronics?
Right.
Well, I think it could work, and it's been performed as a radio, sort of like a radio style opera where you just hear the sound. But I think it works better as a theatrical piece because, that's the genre. It's theater, right. So it's meant to have a live, person in the space. And this will be really interesting because it'll be live streamed and there'll be a music video. Which actually might be sort of an ideal medium for it.
Because especially with COVID, I'm wondering how this work has been for you and the Guerilla Opera.
They're going to go into a TV studio and sort of take different shots of Aliana moving through the space and doing different things and splice it together into an actual theatrical music video movie kind of thing, which is really exciting. And what we're going to do there is, because the electronics, it'd be really hard if you're like taking different shots as you do when you're like shooting a music video. The music needs to be added in post. So,
right.
Yeah. So that's what we'll do. The electronics will be added in post.
Post? Oh, wow. Have you thought about maybe an acoustic version? Like having like an orchestra?
Yeah, I think an acoustic version could be interesting, or even just, I actually wondered if it could work without the electronics, just a soliloquy.
Yeah, kind of read like a play in some ways, it was so cool. But yeah, I would love an acoustic version so that, that would be kind of nice. How was this different from, because you worked with Guerilla Opera before with Clapping Game Songbook, right?
Yeah.
How was it different this time around?
Well, I think this is definitely a very different workflow because of COVID. Meeting on Zoom and being like, it's going to be broadcast, but no one's going to be there live for the performances. But I'm really enjoying the idea of being able to have more theatrical control over the work, or like guerrilla opera has a lot of theatrical control of the work that's really fine-tuned by being able to film it and have different shots and close-ups and actually like splice the space together in a different way. That's really exciting. And I think that's something about the pandemic that's pushed a lot of artists in a way to kind of think in a more cinematic way, maybe, about stuff. So I'm really curious to see what comes out of that. I'm excited. Whereas, you know, with Clapping Game Songbook, it was much more of a traditional theatrical production, working in person and doing staging, lighting, cues, and all those things. So
even then, I remember the performance, we couldn't have people, right? Because I was in March, I think, I want to say.
Yeah, right.
And that was the beginning of our shutdown.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was only a few people allowed in the theater at once. So I actually was able to be there in person, but you know, we were all I was probably ever only got within like 30 feet of anybody. And yeah, and everything was shutting down. So it was a really weird time. And yeah.
I remember watching the video, and I don't know about you. Whenever I watch something like that again, when people are touching each other and singing to each other, I'm just kind of going, "Don't do that. Where are your masks?" You know?
Yeah. Yeah, it's actually really crazy to think about.
Right.
It was like right before we knew, like everyone like knew the full scale of it. Yeah, like doing these like clapping games and like singing in close proximity. Oh my gosh. Oh no.
Oh, it's a whole nother, yeah. Well, do you have any future projects that you want to share?
Sure. Yeah. Right now I'm collaborating with Alarm Will Sound and a video artist. Her name is Stephanie Bird, on a multimedia collaboration. And this started a year ago, and because of COVID, you know, it's kind of transformed, but we're hoping to release a music video in early January this year, taking footage from abandoned train tunnels in the Sierras. And Stephanie and I actually went on a expedition up there in August to take field recordings and film in these miles and miles of abandoned train tunnels. And they are so sci-fi. There's like, whoa, like craziest place I've ever been, probably.
Wait, how abandoned is it?
There's a trail up there. When we went, there was hardly anybody up there, but I think maybe on, you know, maybe on nice days, there's more people. But the train tunnels, they don't have trains anymore or anything like that. And they're from a long time ago. So, and they are, the further you hike, the less people you'll see, because one of the tunnels is like over a mile in length. So you're just going through this dark, spooky tunnel for miles, and like there's like gravel that's deep, so you're like trudging through it, and it's actually really grueling, and really spooky. So I'm surprised they don't film movies in there, because it feels like, I don't know, it feels like a sci-fi spaceship abandoned, I don't know, colony on another planet or something. It's crazy.
Echoes have to be amazing inside, I assume.
Yeah.
Wow. There's
all sorts of, I mean, there's tons of graffiti. There's all these crazy rock formations. There's water. There's bats. There's weird little windows in the side of the tunnel that let through little slats of light. It's crazy. It's so pretty and creepy.
I'm laughing just because I'm like, nope, I'll never, ever, nope, you can never, ever convince me to go on those kind of trips. Oh my God. Oh no. Oh, that's awesome though. That's so cool. So that's in January.
Yeah. We're
awesome.
putting together a video, and then I'm putting together a score for Alarm Will Sound, and we'll have workshops in early December, and get sound going, and then we'll actually cut the video to the music. That's the plan. So it's actually a music video instead of a film.
Any composition for like traditional classical setup, maybe?
Yeah. I mean, I just finished a work for Transient Canvas, Boston.
Okay.
People, for Matt and Amy, for marimba, bass clarinet, and electronics.
Cool.
And
cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
I just sent that one off. So.
How did you get in touch with the Boston crowd? Because I feel like I think I read your bio, you were in UMKC and then you went to San Diego. You're more on the West Coast. I mean, it's 2020, but how somehow...
Well, I applied to the Guerilla Opera Fellowship. That's how I got in touch with them.
Cool.
And I had actually met Amy at Seamus in Oregon a couple years ago when Transient Canvas was the guest ensemble there. And cool. Amy was playing my clarinet piece by chance, but then we kind of hung out and had beers together and all that. And so...
Well, that's really awesome,
Yeah.
You go to somewhere and next thing you know, someone from all the way from Boston plays your piece. I mean, that has to feel pretty good.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Do you have anything to add? What we should be expecting, or because I remember the first time I heard Ophelia's, I'm just like, oh, I really need to sit down for this. I need to sit down for this. This is awesome, but I need to sit because it was just even from the get-go, how she enters just laughing and just as an insane person, in some ways, and it really grabs your attention. So no, I was gonna ask, what should the audience prepare for?
Well, I think the piece is kind of dark. There's definitely a darkness to it. I mean, it does touch on themes of death and themes of depression, I think. To me, there's kind of maybe a little bit of a feminist aspect to it too, because the character of Ofelia in Hamlet is she's kind of this helpless, insane girl who's just following Hamlet around, and then she dies. And I always kind of resented that about her character. And, it's complicated too, because, when you write a female character who is insane, it feels so cliche in a way, and then you feel like, oh, you're not supposed to do that. Like, if you're going to write a female character, you can't have her be depressed or insane or any of those things. But that's not really fair either, because women are complex and we get depressed and we can be insane.
Exactly.
And we can be all the other things that humans can be. So it feels constraining to, feel like you can't do one thing and you have to do the other for any reason. So what I try to do here is just give the idea of Ofelia some depth, like she doesn't just die. She in Ophelia's life stream, she actually has she doesn't die. She's just working through different feelings and options and emotions. And she's curious and she's spiritual and she's scientific and she's going through a hard time. Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you for joining us, and hope to see you on October 30th for our live stream studio performance of Dreamwalker.
Thank you so much for having me, Steve.
And this concludes this episode of the Guerilla Opera Podcast. I hope you can join us on October 30th for the live studio performance of Dreamwalker, featuring works by composer Kaya Sadiaho and Caroline Louise Miller. And on October 31st for the after party, where you get to meet the artists and a sneak peek at our upcoming projects. And of course, if you enjoy this podcast, please like and subscribe and support us on Patreon. Thank you for tuning in. Till then.